Hi everyone. Today we are talking about the book, The Crusades, The Authoritative History of the War for the Holy Land by Thomas Asbridge. It's a book about the Crusades, but it doesn't cover all the Crusades. It's all about the Levant, so really it's about the definitive history of the Crusades in the Levant. But very good, very well written, very detailed. It covers everything from the very beginning when the Byzantine Empire made a plea to Pope Urban II to call for crusades because they lost a big battle and lost a big chunk of region of territory. And Pope Urban II agreeing to that and making a plea to all of Europe, asking for nations to bring their people to the Levant and take back what was lost in the Holy Land, in the Levant. So that's like the Crusades, the First Crusade, all the way to the Ninth Crusade, which is the last of the big Crusades, and then the little ones after too, they cover that as well. Like in the First Crusade, they talk about how the Christians captured Jerusalem, so they established the Kingdom of Jerusalem. They talk about the Second Crusade, which happened between 1147 and 1149, and that was brought on because of the fall of Edessa, which was a very big deal. But that was also considered a failure. There really wasn't too much taken. They failed to take Damascus. They go over the Third Crusade, which is the crusade that usually everyone thinks about. That's the one with Saladin, Richard the Lionheart. Yeah, you have Richard the Lionheart down in the Levant. Another figure is the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, who died down there, which was also a massive deal. Another thing real quick is they don't only cover each crusade, but they talk about what happened in Levant between each crusade. So they talk much about the politics in that region, how Saladin rose to power, how he brought all the different warring groups of Muslims together under him. So by the time the Third Crusade rolled around, which is the one that everyone thinks about because it has Richard the Lionheart, it has Saladin, King Frederick Barbarossa, the Crusaders take Acre, which is a very, very big deal. They basically had a doorway into the Levant because Acre was a city that's on the water, and they had that for a long time. And Acre's a really interesting city in itself. So they got Acre in the Third Crusade, so that was actually a really big deal. This book goes into the Fourth Crusade, which happened in between 1202 and 1204. That's like the crazy crusade, the crusade where things went wild, where you had the Crusaders sacking Constantinople. I did a book review earlier called City of Fortune, all about the city of Venice. That actually goes in really good detail about that. This book also goes into good detail about that. And it just explains how this happens, how the Pope managed that, and what happened after the sacking of Constantinople. If you don't read too much into it, it's a bit of a head scratcher, but this book, and there's other books too, but this book does a good job laying it out, explaining it to you so you understand what the heck happened. Because it's kind of a wild piece of crusading history. And then there's the Fifth Crusade, which happened between, 1217 to 1221. That's the one that happens in Egypt, so it's a change of scenery. There's some really interesting naval battles that happen in the Nile. Then there's the Sixth Crusade, which happened from shortly after. It was like 1229 to 1229. That one was more just pure diplomacy. There wasn't that much fighting, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, after that would be the Seventh Crusade, which was from 1248 to 1254. That's the one with King Louis IX. They talk about his adventures down there. He ultimately gets captured, and there's a bit of a scramble because they basically are trying to deal with the ransom, which is a really large sum, which you would imagine if you capture the King of France, how much money you would demand, and it was a lot of money. And then, of course, naturally in chronological order would be the Eighth Crusade, where King Louis IX went back down there. Following that would be the Ninth Crusade, which happened from 1271 to 1272. And that was just the last major crusade. After that, just sort of like smaller battles and smaller crusades, at least in that region. It goes into the fall of Acre, which was a very big deal and would be definitely a point in history. If you would travel back in time at any point, that's probably a place you would not want to be when Acre's falling, because it was already an overpopulated, medieval, closed-up, walled-off city with limited resources being sieged, and when the walls went down, you did not want to be there. It goes into that. It goes into the legacy of the Crusades. But all in all, really good book. Goes into great detail about just all the key players in all the different Crusades and the major sieges and wars and battles that happened. Yeah, Thomas Asbridge does a very good job writing about the history of the Crusades. And yeah, you won't be bored. Not too academic, just right. It definitely reads like a novel in parts. And when it needs to get factual, it won't be too heavy. And you'll just breeze through this 681-page history of the Levant, the Crusades in the Levant. You'll finish it pretty quickly. I finished it pretty quickly. So anyway, I highly recommend The Crusades, The Authoritative History of the War for the Holy Land by Thomas Asbridge. Go out and read it. It's quite good.